I'm Ami and Isif. Welcome to the program. The United States has a new president, but it's once again Donald Trump. He took the oath of office today and began his second term as president of the United States, promising a new golden age for America. And Trump is already getting down to business. At a rally of his supporters packed inside a Washington D.C. stadium, Trump began signing a series of executive orders. One of the first was to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Treaty.
Thank you, sir.
Trump told the crowd he would be signing more orders once he was back at the White House.
And, you know, tonight I'm going to be signing on the J6 hostages, pardons, to get them out. And as soon as I leave, I'm going to the Oval Office and we'll be signing pardons for a lot of people, a lot of people.
Donald Trump's swearing-in ceremony was held inside the Capitol building, the Capitol One, the same spot where his supporters, who he's the Capitol building. It was the same spot where his supporters, who he's promising to pardon, rioted 4 years ago. Trump's comeback marks only the second time in American history that a president has served non-consecutive terms.
I will faithfully execute.
And I will faithfully execute
The office.
This is the moment that Donald Trump is sworn in as the 47th President of the United States of America.
and will to the best of my ability.
Cold weather forced this, the 60th inauguration, inside to the Capitol Rotunda. Today garlanded in tradition and ceremony, but just over 4 years ago was packed with rioters decrying the legitimacy of the American electoral system. Earlier in the day, outgoing President Joe Biden received his successor at the White House. Biden told Trump welcome home as the transitional meeting dating back almost 200 years got underway. Biden and Trump traveled to the Capitol together, where former presidents and dignitaries gathered for the event. In a sign of Trump's unconventional style, a coterie of tech moguls was seated in prime position, despite a limited and competitive guest list. A little after noon in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump became the 47th president before delivering his first speech of his second term. He declared an emergency on the U.S. border with Mexico and repeated his mantra of drill, baby, drill, before declaring America is entering a new golden age.
The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
Trump has promised a slew of far-reaching executive orders in his first days in office, leaving America and the world in no doubt that politics have changed with Donald Trump, once again the President of the United States.
And joining me now is DW correspondent Max Zander in Washington, D.C. It's good to see you, Max. So Trump is at the Oval Office for the first time now in his second term. Just a short while ago, we saw Trump signing the first executive orders in front of a crowd of supporters at the Capitol Arena. So that's pretty untraditional, isn't it, to sign the first executive orders at a rally, basically?
That's right, Amy. And it's very, very untraditional what's happening here at the moment. And as you said, it's a very fluid process. So from what we're hearing, Donald Trump is still in the Oval Office, or just moments ago, he was still signing executive orders and pardons for the January 6 offenders. But as to what he was doing just a little bit earlier at the Capital One Arena, that is indeed quite uncommon. I believe in 2017, during Trump's first term, signing the executive orders became kind of an event, but nothing like this. And as we already heard in the report there, the inauguration ceremonies had to be moved indoors due to the cold weather. The parade that would usually take place in the streets of Washington took place indoors at the Capital One Arena. That probably also gave Donald Trump the opportunity to turn this into a public event. And for him, of course, it's showing that he delivers, but it's also him displaying power and authority. He announced he would be signing lots and lots of executive orders, perhaps more than 100 in the first couple of days. He started at the arena with the first executive order by revoking all of President Joe Biden's, the former president's, the outgoing president, the former president's executive orders have all been revoked as the first action that Donald Trump took there. Among the executive orders was also a hiring freeze for the moment, a regulation freeze for government offices, for government regulation. There were some trivial executive orders among these orders that were signed there, such as government workers would have to return to in-person work. They would have to return to the offices, couldn't work from home any longer. And there were those that have a lot of consequences, such as President Trump announcing that he would withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later. That is a big deal for people outside of the United States. But you also said that he signed pardons for the Capitol riots, the rioters on January 6th, and he referred to them as hostages. So how is that actually going down with the U.S. public? That's a pretty divisive issue, isn't it?
I would believe so. From what we heard, about 1,500 full pardons were signed, and 6 commutations of sentences also took place. We're not exactly clear yet about the exact cases there, but this is one of the central promises of Donald Trump, something that he's been speaking of at all his rallies, pretty much, is that the election was stolen from him. The people, his supporters, tried to take it back, and they were unrightfully sentenced to harsh sentences, as he would put it. Among his supporters, certainly he's showing that he is, making good for his promises. But then, of course, among his political opponents, it's probably rather shocking and looks like another attack on democracy, so to say.
And there was one emotional moment when Trump was greeted by families of people taken hostage by Hamas in Gaza. How prominent has the crisis in the Middle East been at Trump's inauguration today?
I mean, this has been a very prominent topic. This has been the news in the days following up to the election, the Gaza ceasefire deal, the hostage deal. Steve Witkoff spoke at the Capital One Arena prior to Donald Trump, and he is the special Middle East envoy who was in the room or at the negotiations, and who likely also played a very important role in these negotiations. The Trump campaign, or Donald Trump himself, tried to take all the credit for what happened in the Middle East. They try to frame it as their success. Likely it is a joint effort, but today this played a central role. At the beginning of Trump's speech, prior to him speaking, there was a number of people, family members, and a survivor, former hostage, who was held in Gaza, was at the Capital One Arena. These people were brought onto the stage. They were able to shake Trump's hand. And Trump started his speech with saying, we'll bring him home, but then he immediately started talking about the January 6th offenders, calling them January 6th hostages, which took away a little bit from this very important moment.
DW correspondent Max Zander, thanks. And let's now take a look at more detail of Trump's decisions on climate energy with Brian Murray, director of the Nicholas Institute for Energy, Environment, and Sustainability at Duke University. He's joining us now from Durham, North Carolina. Welcome to DW. One of Trump's first decisions, and this is once again because he's already withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement, but now he's done it again. So what does this mean for the global effort to fight climate change?
Well, thank you for having me on. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding accord requiring signatories to publish plans for reducing their planet warming emissions. When President Trump did this in his first term, it took 4 years for the U.S. to leave, because that's the way the statutes were set up in the Framework Convention. Now the delay is just 12 months. So the withdrawal is going to take effect on January 20th, 2026, 1 year from now. What this really means is it backs, yes?
No.
What's
the meaning then?
Yeah. Well, it backs away the U.S.'s commitment that was made under President Biden to reduce emissions 50 to 52% by 2030, and most recently put forward after the election a 61 to 66% reduction by 2035. And these are reductions below 2005 levels. It also means that billions of dollars of climate finance commitments that the U.S. had made are unlikely to be fulfilled. It also means that the U.S. forgoes influence on the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change negotiation process, much as it did under the first withdrawal.
And rejoining
the real effect of the if I could say this, the real effect of the Paris Agreement is not so much the pledges that are made, but the domestic action that's taken. And that's the prerogative of the U.S. administration and to some extent the U.S. Congress. And that is certainly going to fall off as a result of this decision.
Right. Rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement wasn't the only thing that Biden did for his climate legacy, for the fighting global warming. So what else is Trump doing that could reverse Biden's legacy on climate?
Well, one thing is there are a number of regulations that were put in place with the Environmental Protection Agency. For instance, new rules to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from power plants and to increase vehicle efficiency standards. Those are likely in peril. Energy efficiency standards at the federal level are also unlikely to be followed through upon. More aggressive removals from that will likely require congressional action. And one of the things is the congressional majority into Trump's Republican Party is very, very small in the House of Representatives. So there's very little room for there to be dissension within the ranks. But the signature initiative of President Biden on climate and energy was the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022. It was passed by the narrowest of margins in the U.S. Senate by one vote. Essentially what the Inflation Reduction Act did is it authorized up to $400 billion in expenditures on things like grants for low carbon technology, but also significantly tax credits for the adoption of low carbon technologies. So in the electric power sector, like solar and wind, there was very generous benefits, very generous tax credits for electric vehicles. And all of these are still in right now because they were passed by Congress. But President Trump, when he came into office, is talking about reversing these things. And it would, again, he can't, with the stroke of a pen, reverse it because it actually is law passed by Congress. But the enthusiasm that he gets behind it is likely to be diminished.
And just briefly, we're coming out of some seriously destructive wildfires in California. Has that shifted the conversation on climate change at all in the United States?
Well, it's definitely shifted it across the country in terms of most people find this clearly related to climate change. In today's inaugural speech, President Trump didn't connect it to climate change in any way, but used it as a form of criticism of elected officials in California and Los Angeles.
Okay, Brian Murray from Duke University. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And let's get more from Ethan Bearman. He's an attorney and an adjunct professor at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. Welcome back to DW. Trump said in his speech that a golden age for America was starting now. What kind of vision did he outline for the next 4 years?
Well, as I understand his words and what he has promised, his idea of a golden age is for those who believe in his vision solely, and anybody who disagrees, it's not going to be a golden age. So golden age to him means it's going to be the age of tech billionaires who contribute now to his campaign. It's going to be a regressive age of oil and gas. It is going to be an age that rides on President Biden's actual return of manufacturing to the United States, unlike what happened in President Trump's first term. It's going to be an age where we have a shortage of workers. If he is really going to begin the mass deportations tomorrow, as he has promised, we are going to have a shortage of labor in the United States, which will actually lead to further inflation. But it will also be, in his idea, at least his world, a turning on its head of anything that would resemble kind of traditional politics in Washington. And this time around, it's going to be very different from his first term in his ability to get that done.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. He's kind of in a tricky position here with his inauguration, trying to tell Americans that they're entering a new era, a new golden age, when he was already president, starting in 2017 for 4 years. So how would you compare Trump 2025, the Trump that we're seeing here, to the one who took office back in 2017?
Well, this is a different Donald Trump. This is a somewhat more bitter and angry Donald Trump. Remember, we had the January 6, 2021 riots that I believe you presented to us a little bit earlier, where they were attempting to overthrow the election results that came out. This time around, he does not have kind of traditional Republicans who understand 240 plus years of kind of unwritten rules on how things happen in Washington. He doesn't have those guardrails in place anymore. Every single person he has nominated, the majority of the Republican members of the Senate, the majority of the Republican members of the House of Representatives in Congress, are now fully in the orbit of Donald Trump's beliefs instead of traditional conservatism. So without those guardrails in place, he actually has greater opportunity to get done things according to his vision, as opposed to what people traditionally would think of with the Republican Party and conservatives in the United States.
And the American president, according to the American system, is allowed to sign executive orders. Presidents often do that in their first day in office. But Trump has promised a historic number of executive orders signed within the next hours, around 100, he said. Can you explain for our viewers, first of all, what an executive order is, and if there is actually precedent for signing so many?
So it's very interesting. He's not going to sign a record number, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt, back in the 1930s and early 1940s, who was a three-term president, signed well over 3,000 executive orders, far more than any other president in American history. Joe Biden signed 160 in his one term, and President Trump signed 220 in his first term. An executive order is this: it's actually a document signed by the president that, as long as when it's within his powers under the executive branch of the federal government, is able to sign a document that says this is what the federal government is going to do at my direction, and if it's as long as it's within his powers to do so, it will take effect. Often it's about political messaging. The border issue and beginning immigration deportations is, generally speaking, well within his powers to do so. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, not so much. There are going to be legal challenges to things that he does. There are other nations that are related to the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, we have Cuba, we have the country of Mexico itself, who has threatened to rename it, the Gulf, to rename things for Mexico as a result. These are complicated issues, but generally speaking, he has a lot of flexibility to get these signed.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there. Ethan Bearman, an attorney also teaching at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, DW caught up with Trump supporters outside Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., and they shared the reactions to the new president's speech.
I mean, he just echoed what we have been wanting for the last 4 years, and that's to fix immigration, to bring the country back together. Right now it's super divided, it's been divided, and so to bring everyone back with the economy, immigration, and just get everything back. Common sense, that's what he said, the era of common sense, and that's exactly right.
I have family that lives on the southern border. They said it's really, really bad. Obviously, I'm from up north, I'm from Michigan, and people up north don't realize how bad it is, but my relative lives on the southern border. Terrible. And then just end of the wars. I'm in the military. I'll fight for my country. I'll die for my country. But, you know, preferably there's peace on earth, right?
This is a great moment. It could happen just once in a lifetime, that he has a great policy and he's going to transform the world, and it's going to bring so much peace and so much stabilization. And so I am supporting him just beyond measure.
Yeah, I'm just really excited too. I think this time, now that his second time, he's like locked and loaded, focused, just ready to go. And he's got a good group of people surrounding him, like in his cabinet and stuff, so it'll be good.
And world leaders have been reacting to Trump's inauguration. Let's take a look at that. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, "I look forward to working closely together once again to benefit both our countries and to shape a better future for the world." EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen wrote on X, "The EU looks forward to working closely with you to tackle global challenges. Together, our societies can achieve greater prosperity and strengthen their common security." And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated, "President Trump is always decisive, and the peace through strength policy he announced provides an opportunity to strengthen American leadership and achieve a long-term and just peace, which is the top priority." Plus, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum posted on social media, "On behalf of the government of Mexico, I congratulate Donald Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States. As neighbors and business partners, dialogue, respect, and cooperation will always be the symbol of our relationship."